and the practical side of this whole message. And thank you again for your hospitality. You've been so gracious and warm. We have felt well received and appreciate that so much. In fact, we have conferences coming up in Michigan, Florida, Long Island, New York, and Connecticut. If you've got friends in any of those states, please consider letting them know and going to our website, loveandrespect.com. It'd be great to have them come. Well, we've looked at the crazy cycle, the energizing cycle, and now we're going to look at the rewarded cycle. The crazy cycle basically answers the question, why do we negatively react to each other? Well, without love, she reacts without respect, and without respect, he reacts without love, and it gets crazy. Well, how do we get off the crazy cycle? Well, we decode and trust that our spouse has goodwill, and they're really not trying to be offensive. But we also can become proactive by getting on the energizing cycle, which answers the question, how do we motivate a person? And that is answered by meeting their deepest need. Her need for love, his need for respect. And we've spelled love, C-O-U-P-L-E. We've spelled respect, C-H-A-R-S. And we need to know that if my spouse is reacting in ways that feel unloving, perhaps she feels that we're not experiencing couple. If our husband is reacting in ways that feel unloving, perhaps you're not respecting his desires related to chairs. And we can decode. But we can also become proactive by meeting the need for love, meeting the need for respect. Even if they don't deserve it, we give it to them as a gift, and most good-willed people are going to respond. And then Sarah went through practical things. And again, the issue here is those things that we ask you to do practically are not within your nature. We've still had women go through the practical that Sarah just did, and they still write and say, now share with me how to do this. You see, because it doesn't seem natural, so therefore they conclude it doesn't work in my relationship. They filter things through their own female grid. Wait a minute. You do something toward him that doesn't feel natural to you. You do something toward her that doesn't feel natural to you. There are certain things that she said for you men to do that just don't seem natural. So you think, oh, come on, give me something else to do here. No. Act on this. Act on this. Or sit down even with your spouse and go over, add to the list. Ask the other person what would make them feel loved and respected. You can figure this out. We're adults. It's not that complicated, but it's a matter of being intentional about it. But here's now our worst fear. You're going to commit yourself to reducing the craziness. You're going to seek to energize your spouse, and lo and behold, they don't respond. And in fact, things get worse. And some of you are going to do this. And because we are all adolescent in the home, you need to understand that. We are all adolescent in the home. We act like teenagers at times in the home, and we need to come to grips with that. But some of us don't think that other people act like teenagers in the home. And so when our spouse acts that way, we then say, see, it doesn't work with you. So you do the loving thing or the respectful thing, and your spouse reacts in a negative way. Well, so much for that. Or they may say, well, you're just doing that because Emerson and Sarah told you to. And so, well, okay, all right, forget it. And just that quickly, you're here Friday night, Saturday, in all of 72 seconds, and you just simply walk away from it. And that's what will happen with a very small percentage, but it will happen. It will just completely end a couple hours after today. And so, but you got to get prepared for this, because part of the reason that happens is you think, well, see, it doesn't work. No. If your spouse isn't responding the way you hope, maybe it's working tremendously. Look, if you've had 13 years of really some sad things, do you think in 13 minutes you're going to just suddenly stop this? If you walk into a forest for 2 hours, it's going to take you 2 hours to walk out of that forest. But I kind of have it for every year, it'll maybe take you a month. It's a speculation on my part. So if you've had difficulties for 3 years, really serious stuff, it may take 12 weeks for you to kind of begin to reprocess some of this. But I'm going to tell you, for you to put on respect toward a husband, and for him not to respond if there's any degree of goodwill, he's one bad dude. And for you to put on love toward a woman, who's, whatever, is a good-willed woman, and she doesn't respond, she's got to be one bad dudess. You've got to come to a point where you realize, hey, in all probability, this is going to work if I just hang in there. But also, if your spouse has been unloving and disrespectful, and now you put on respect and you put on love, guess what? They come under conviction. Here's a very important point. They come under conviction. And it puts them in a position where they need to change. And if they're not ready to change because they're mad, then there's going to be a period of time here where they're going to be the opposite of what you want them to be. It's crucial that you realize that it's actually working and they're under conviction. So don't give up. Don't Don't conclude that because immediately you're not experiencing paradise that this doesn't work for you. It most certainly will work for you. If there's any degree of goodwill in that relationship, it will work. Think of it. If you honestly meet their need, even if they don't appreciate it at the moment, do you think long-term they can continue to resist that? It doesn't make sense to me. What woman here would consistently resist a man's desire to love her for who she is? Every woman knows that if there's any degree of goodwill in her and she hasn't transferred her affection to some other man, that she's going to respond. And what man here, if a woman begins to put on respect and meet his need for respect, and he's not trying to get out of the relationship, but is in the relationship, and she starts responding respectfully, that he is not going to respond to that. I mean, she's a better man than he is. And she's operating by the honor code. You talk about a guy that eventually is going to soften. Every man knows that. The question is, will we have enough confidence as a man that if I put on love, she'll soften? Will I have enough confidence as a woman if I put on respect that he'll soften? But he may not soften, she may not soften as soon as we want. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, that's our worst fear. And that's what we're going to look at now. The rewarded cycle. His love blesses regardless of her respect, and her respect blesses regardless of his love. And we make a commitment to do this unconditionally, and we'll explain, though, the incentive for doing this. You remember last night we said, you're in this big fight with your spouse. You make me so mad. I'm so mad because of you. I'm out of control. Ring, ring. Hello, Pastor Dan. Hi, yeah, no, we'll be at the prayer meeting. And we said, we're really not out of control. And we said, if a film crew followed you around and gave you $10 million for never getting mad at your spouse, let's say, would you get mad at your spouse over a 6-week period? No. And then we point out, we don't lack the ability to do this. We lack the incentive. We're just not getting paid enough. But what I'm going to share with you is the rewarded cycle says that there is an incentive, and I'm going to unpack that for you. But before we launch into that, let me just give you a couple little things that I want you to rehearse with me to do. Ladies, at times I want you to say to your husband, that felt unloving. And men, I want you to be able to say, that felt disrespectful. Ladies, can you say, that felt unloving together with me? That felt unloving. Again, that felt unloving. One more time. Now don't say to your husband, you are unloving. You have no love in your body. You don't have an ounce of love. You're the most unloving. Don't bring accusations. Accusations do not motivate people. Attacks don't motivate people. If you say, that felt unloving, you're not saying you're right. You're not saying you're wrong. You're not saying he's right. You're not saying he's wrong. You're just saying, that felt unloving. Say it again. Okay. Gentlemen, say, that felt disrespectful. Again. Don't say, you're a disrespectful witch, here's your new broom. Fly, baby, fly. Usually that doesn't go over too well. But you say, that felt disrespectful. You're not saying you're right, you're not saying you're wrong. You're not saying she's right, you're not saying she's wrong. You're just saying, that's how you felt. Again? Now, of course, our fear is, and you've already gone there, you say, that felt unloving, that he's going to say, well, nobody could love you. And it's always about you. You're overly sensitive. You're so childish. Everything's about love, love, love. Love, 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 love. And frankly, I don't want to love you right now. Of course, that's your worst fear. That's your worst fear, that he would actually say that. Or, that felt disrespectful. Nobody could respect you. I heard everything Emerson said. I differ with him. He has no idea. He has no clue. He has no clue. He's ridiculous. Nobody could respect you. It must be earned. The Marines are right. Until you start loving me, I'm going to have contempt and belligerence toward you, buddy. I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact, but you can go ahead and continue to talk to him that way. But that's your worst fear as a guy, that she's going to do that. I mean, you talk about really getting to you. So, because we fear that that's going to be the worst reaction, we don't want to go there. But remember, we said, who moves first? The one who sees himself or herself as the most mature. And if you're on the crazy cycle, then the topic at hand is no longer the issue. We said when the issue isn't the issue, then you better deal with what the issue is. And I believe you're on the crazy cycle. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, he reacts without love. And you're on that, and so the mature one needs to go there. You must go there, whether it's your own feelings or, and here's the other side of this thing, that felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? That felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? Now, the reason this is so powerful is you're putting voice to your deepest need, but you're giving your good-willed husband the benefit of the doubt. by saying, I'm feeling unloving, so maybe prior to this, I did something that came across to you as disrespectful, which is what's triggering the crazy cycle right now. That I did something disrespectful which caused you, quote, quote, to react in ways that felt unloving to me. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Can we talk about that? That felt unloving. I'd like to address that. But did I come across as disrespectful? I want to address that. So that felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? Ladies, can you say that with me? That felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? Again, that felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? Again, that felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? On your own? Now, when the issue isn't the issue, and that's the issue, the mature one will go there. The mature one will go there. I hope you've written that down. And furthermore, these things feel uncomfortable at first. It doesn't feel right to say this. Remember when you first rode a bike, you didn't feel comfortable, but now it's second nature. Remember when you first took a typing class and you had a test for speed and accuracy and you had neither? Remember? Or remember when you're learning to drive a stick shift and you got on a hill and had to stop? And remember when you put it in first gear to try to push in the clutch and the gas and bang, it hit the car behind you? And now you can be whistling, listening to the radio, talking, doing math puzzles, you can, the whole thing. It's just second nature. Things that are uncomfortable to begin with become learning a language, same thing. Things are always awkward at first, but you stick with it. And I'm going to encourage you to stick with this statement, that felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? Gentlemen, we're going to say that felt disrespectful. Did I come across as unloving? Can we say that? That felt disrespectful. Did I come across as unloving? Again, that felt disrespectful. Did I come across as unloving? On your own? That felt disrespectful. Did I come across as unloving? Now, are you willing to make a commitment that you're going to say that when the issue isn't the issue? I'm going to ask you at the end of this thing to make a decision on some of these things because there's power in this. Remember, there's power in this. I mean, if your spouse said it to you, what would you feel? Well, it's going to convict you. There's no question these things are going to feel uncomfortable. Get ready for the discomfort. But eventually, if you continue to avoid the real issue here, what's this going to do? You're just going to keep on the crazy cycle. Somebody's got to go deeper. Now, of course, what's the fear is I say, that felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? And he says, you always come across as disrespectful. That's right. That's exactly why I'm unloving. Okay, that's your worst fear. Or you say, that felt unloving. That felt disrespectful. Did I come across as unloving? You're always unloving. There's not an ounce of love. You're horrible. Blah, 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 blah. Yada, 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 yada. And so now what are we going to do? Here's what you do. If that's what happens, I don't believe that's going to happen. That's rare. But let's just say it happens in your relationship. You turn and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And then exit. Don't define yourself. Don't debate. Don't do anything. You're suffering at this point, just say, I'm sorry. And even as you go off, you're just doing that because Emerson told you to. He's right. He's right. Emerson's right. Just acknowledge that this is truth. This is truth. And say, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? So you say, that felt unloving. Did I come across as disrespectful? You're always disrespectful. Well, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Then exit. So too, when you say, that felt disrespectful, did I come across as unloving? Well, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And exit. Now, when you do it toward a woman, gentlemen, here's probably what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you, in all probability, the minute you say, well, I'm sorry, will you forgive me, in genuine humility, and you start to exit, she'll go, no, come back, it's me. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. No, really, it's me. And full circle. Remember the full circle? Ventilate, I'm sorry, will you forgive me, will you forgive me? You've entered the woman's world, the axiom, it's almost axiomatic. You've entered her world. She has to bring it forward. When you do that, you are really married to one bad dude. I'm going to tell you, for her not to respond that way. And if she doesn't, you're married to a bitter woman, you're going to have to give her a lot of grace. But almost 90% of the cases, you're going to find the woman moving toward, no, I shouldn't have said that. I was being lippy. I'm so sorry. It's very natural for her to say, I'm sorry. What about the other side? What about the man? When you say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me, you exit. He's not as expressive, responsive, so he isn't going to follow you as quickly. And so you go off, go into the kitchen. But then my prediction is he's going to think about it. Man, shouldn't have said that. I'm an idiot. 10 minutes passes maybe, and he comes in the kitchen. You're standing there. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said it. What's for dinner? And just let him express his sorrow that way. Don't talk about it anymore. Just receive it, okay? I'm going to tell you, folks, if you do this, this will work. This will work. Also, introduce humor. If you've got a lighter relationship, like Sarah said, just get funny with this thing. You're stepping on my air hose, or I'm about to step on your air hose. Here, put on my glasses. Introduce some humor. Lighten up. Some of us are way too serious. There's a time for laughter, Ecclesiastes says. Introduce some humor, but not for the purpose of making fun of the other person, but lighten up, and it'll lighten up your own spirit. Life is too serious for some of you. I've been telling some really good jokes, and some of you have not laughed yet. And it's true, and I'm going to tell you, the fact that you don't laugh at things that are really funny, it really concerns me. You're in your marriage. This is where it concerns me. This is what you're doing in the marriage. You are so melancholy, so God intended joy. Christ talked about joy again and again and rejoicing. There's got to be an element of lightness. And you've got to understand that may be the thing that's undermining your relationship. Okay. Have you ever received a gift that you really wanted, but you didn't know if you were going to get? And it was a gift that you really wanted. And then one day you suddenly got it. You remember when, let's say you were 10 and you really wanted a bicycle, and you've been asking your parents for a bike for Christmas. And they hinted they were going to get you a bike, but they hinted that they weren't, and they left you in limbo. So you didn't know, but you wanted this bike. You wanted this bike. Oh. And Christmas morn came, and you awakened, and you jumped out of bed, ran downstairs, ran into the living room where the Christmas tree was, and as you came into the living room where the Christmas tree was, there the bike was, and you went, oh! Do you remember that moment? Whenever you receive a gift that is a gift of great value to you, and suddenly you receive it, it's, oh! Do you remember when he proposed to you, maybe unexpectedly, and he pulled out that ring? And you didn't know that it was going to be at that moment? What did you do? You went, oh! She did, Or maybe she laughed like that. I don't know. Maybe. But, that. In fact, I was going in and out of New York for a while, and the chaplain of the Yankees is a good buddy of mine, and so we were doing a lot of stuff in New York, and one night they had me speak to these 35 guys on Wall Street, some successful business guys on Wall Street, and so I was giving this illustration. I said, has anybody had an experience like that? And the guy in the back said, yeah, in fact, just recently. And I said, well, what happened? He said, unexpectedly, I got a bonus check for $100,000. I said, that works. That gets at the idea. That would work. As a senior pastor, if the deacons ever met and decided to give me, the senior pastor, a bonus check for $100,000, it'd be Stanford and Sons. It'd be the big one. Oh. It's a great way to get rid of a pastor, actually. Well, I want to come back to that in just a moment, but not getting rid of a pastor, but to the idea of a gift. And but what's interesting, Ephesians 5:33 continues that when Paul wrote this epistle, chapter and verse weren't there. Those were added later so people could get to these texts quickly. And so as you continue to read the epistle, he goes on to say, whatever good thing each one does, this he'll receive back from the Lord, whether slave or free. And he states a principle here that applies to everything that he's just said in the immediate context, that the Lord intends to reward. New International says that the Lord will reward you. But whatever good thing each one does, this he'll receive back from the Lord. In other words, the Lord is watching. The Lord intends to reward. Well, what does he intend to reward? He intends to reward those things that had just been addressed. And it's interesting, in Ephesians 1 through 3, you have doctrine, then 4 through 6, application. In Colossians 1 and 2, you have doctrine, and 3 and 4, application. You'll see that Romans, doctrine, and then application. They always had doctrine and application. And a lot of times when they would swing from doctrine to application, they would swing on 4 hinges. Husband-wife relationship, parent-child relationship, employer-employee relationship, and authority, king, and citizen. And those tended to be the hinges. Why? Because it's in those daily areas that God watches. This is where he wants to reward us. He wants to see, are you taking the doctrine and applying it practically to these areas? Someone said, you want to know what the problem with life is? It's so daily. So daily. And yet, it's in the daily problems that the Lord watches. He wants to see how you're doing in your marriage. And that's where He rewards. He wants to see how you're doing in your parenting. That's where He's going to reward. He wants to see how you're doing in relationship to those that you work for every day. He wants to see how you're doing in relationship to the government. And He just has decided that these are the areas that are very important to me. These are the areas that matter to me. And may I suggest to you that what matters to God matters. And so when He watches you put on love toward that disrespectful woman, there's a cha-ching effect in heaven. And when He sees you put on respect toward a man who's unloving, we're not talking about violence here. We're talking about violence you get out of the way. 1 Corinthians 7, let her separate. Let her leave her husband, in that sense, not divorce, but separate. Get out of harm's way. We're not talking about physical violence. We're talking about you're married to a basic good-willed man who is not coming across to you in emotional, social ways that feel loving to you. Not talking about physical violence on either side of this equation. But when you put on respect toward a man who's coming across to you in an unloving way, there's a cha-ching effect in heaven. Whatever good thing each one does, this he'll receive back from the Lord. There's an accounting going on, and He's watching. It's very kind of exciting, In fact, to take this, one step further, it's kind of obviously God's doing something. There's some kind of an accounting, and we don't really know what it looks like, so this is pretend, what I'm about to say, but it's as though you've got this huge handle and your name is on it, and you got 1,000 angels on your handle. And they're watching, these lead angels and the Lord, and they're just watching you. And there's this huge golden bowl. We know the saints of the prayers of the saints are accumulating golden bowls in Revelation. So taking that imagery, there's something. God is somehow keeping account of this. This imagery is my own imagination, but nonetheless it makes the point. And so this handle is here, and all these angels are watching you, and there's the lead angel. Look at that! He put on love toward that woman trained in the 70s who has issues. Look at that! Look at that. Hit it, angels. Cha-ching. He did it again. Cha-ching. Look at her. She put on respect toward that man who has problems from family of origin. His dad was angry. He's angry. Look at that. Hit it, angels. Cha-ching. She did it again. Cha-ching. Now, that's a stupid illustration. But it makes the point that there is an accounting and there is a reward. In fact, the reason it's stupid is this. Paul says, eye has not seen, ear has not heard, it has not entered the heart of man what God has prepared for those who love Him. Now, there are certain things that God has revealed to us that we know, and we can have the mind of Christ, and we see things, and so He's revealed certain things to us. But there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't know. In fact, Paul said in Ephesians 3 that God will do exceedingly, abundantly beyond all that we can think or ask. The idea in the Greek, as I understand it, He'll do exceedingly, exceedingly, abundantly, abundantly, beyond all that we can think or ask. In fact, Deuteronomy 29:29 says, the secret things belong to the Lord, but those things that have been revealed to us are revealed to us and belong to us and to our children's children. But these secret things, they're the secret things. Had a guy come up to me, a prisoner, said, Pastor, what are those secret things? I don't know. It says, the secret things belong to the Lord. Now, I appreciate the compliment. But the truth is, there's no vacancy in the Trinity. And if there were, I don't think I'm going to be one that's replacing whoever's absent, okay? So these are the secret things that belong to the Lord, and that means that we don't know. In fact, Paul himself said, 14 years ago, whether in the body or out of body, a man was caught up in the third heavens. And then he identifies himself as that man and heard and saw things that were indescribable. And then we learn in that text that he was told not to tell the church what he heard and saw. And in order for him not to tell the church, a thorn in the flesh was given to him, a messenger of Satan, to buffet his body, to keep him humble about this revelation, so he wouldn't boast to the church about what was coming. It's been said if we really knew what was coming, there would be far more holy suicides. Although you can't have a holy suicide. That's an oxymoron, but nonetheless, the point is made emotionally that if you and I really knew, and it's as though God is saying, I don't want you to know. In fact, He is clearly saying He does not intend for us to know. That He has kept a lid on this. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard. It has not entered the heart of man what God has prepared for those who love Him. He will do exceedingly abundantly beyond all that we can think or ask. The secret things belong to the Lord. But one thing's for sure, whatever good thing each one does, this he's going to receive back from the Lord, whether slave or free. That's why Jesus says very clearly that when you die, he wants to say to you, well done, good and faithful servant. He wants to be able to say to you, well done, well done. In fact, several years ago, I saw a man who has cerebral palsy, who's a believer, talk about this well done idea. And it caused me to cry when I saw him, because when Mom and Dad were divorced, the lady next door, Geraldine, had cerebral palsy. And she basically took care of me, babysat a lot. She was the same age as my mom, but she had this cerebral palsy challenge. And Geraldine just loved me for years. She just loved me. And I'd go back and see her, and she'd say, "You're getting so big," and she would just be so excited about seeing me. So I have a real special place in my heart. And when I saw this man who was CP talk about the well done statement, he presented it this way.
Jesus has me in his oven, and he set it at 350, and I'm baking in there. And one day I'm going to die, and then I'm going to heaven. And Jesus is going to lean over and look in there and say, well done.
I just cried and cried when I saw that. Then this man says, my problem is cerebral palsy. What's yours? We're all handicapped. We're all handicapped by sin. But there's coming a day when we're going to stand before the Lord in all of our handicaps. And he knows our deepest heart, particularly if we make a decision today to do this in a way that brings him pleasure. And he's going to say, well done. Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful in a few things. You put on love toward that disrespectful person. You put on respect toward that unloving person. I saw that. Those few little things. You were faithful in those little things. Just for a few short years. It mattered to me. Thank you for having it matter to you. You were faithful in those few things. I'm going to put you in charge of many things. Enter the joy of your master. Folks, you have no idea. You have no idea. And that's because he did not intend for you to have an idea. He will do exceedingly abundantly beyond all that you can think or ask. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, it has not entered the heart of man what God has prepared for those who love him, because the secret things belong to the Lord. And everything you do has a cha-ching effect, and it will be rewarded in heaven. But not only will you experience that moment, I call it the unending first moment. It will never cease. You will do that throughout eternity. The ecstasy is beyond, exceedingly, abundantly beyond. We have no idea, because he did not intend for us. And all you have to do is a few little things for a few short years. And then do you realize how long eternity is? And all you have to do is do what matters to God. The interesting thing is, what is foolish to the world is the wisdom of God. It is foolishness to all of your secular friends for you to put on love toward a disrespectful person. It is foolishness for you to put on respect toward an unloving person. You will not get endorsement for that. That's foolishness. Yes, but Paul is very clear. The foolishness of man is the wisdom of God. And what is the wisdom of God is the foolishness of man. It is foolish to love someone who's disrespectful. It is foolish to disrespect someone who's loving. But it's what matters to God. Hidden angels. And are you prepared to make a decision? This is the incentive. This is worth more than 10 million big ones. But the question is, do you really believe? Do you really believe? Do you really believe? You know, it's interesting, by the way. There's a story The Sadducees and the Pharisees, these were two religious groups. And the reason I want to say this also is that you're going to be rewarded, but guess what? Your spouse isn't going to be standing next to you at that very moment where the Lord says to you, well done. They'll be before the Lord on another time, another occasion. You won't be standing there as husband and wife. Did you know that? This is based on the story of the Sadducees. Now, the Pharisees were a Jewish group that were antagonistic toward Jesus, and the Sadducees were antagonistic. But the difference between the Pharisees and the Sadducees was that the Pharisees believed in the resurrection of the dead. The Sadducees